Hi everyone, Stepan here. I'm going to show you the last game I played in the Vrsar Open, and I don't think I've ever participated in a more beautiful game. I don't think I've ever seen a more beautiful game live. Well, you can be the judge of that, but this might sound masochistic, but I enjoyed playing it. Okay, so my opponent starts with e4, I played c6, and we get the advanced Caro-Kann. And after bishop to f5, my opponent plays something I was actually expecting. When he plays the advanced Caro-Kann, he plays bishop d3. Now this is not good, because I get to exchange my light squared bishop, close down the pawn structure, and I basically have a good French, where I will try to play c5 and try to put pressure on these two pawns with my knight on c6. So I get very normal development, and without the light squared bishop, white doesn't have the usual attack on the king side, or at least it's much harder to start an attack on the king side. It takes time to get the knights into play. Okay, he played knight e2, which is one of the main moves. You can also play knight f3. I played c5, which is the best move. c3, he doesn't really want to take, giving up the center. Knight c6, castles. Okay, and then this position I played something that I've decided I was going to play, queen b6. You can also play knight g7 here, and after knight d2, there are two options. You can play h5, knight f5, or you can play knight f5 without h5. Usually in training games where I've had this position once or twice, I played with h5, and after f4, knight f5. This basically prevents g4 and any further advance on the king side. And then later on you can decide what to do. Usually bishop e7, queen b6, castles queenside, get your rook to the g file, and you start an attack. But queen b6 is also okay. It sort of prevents this idea with f4, because if f5 you can just take the pawn. It puts pressure. Also prevents bishop e3 in many positions, and just makes white's development slightly awkward. He played knight d2. And here I made a mistake. I played knight h6. It's way more common to play knight g to e7 with the idea of knight f5. But knight h6, I had a specific setup in mind, which I sort of wanted to achieve. After knight f3, I really should play knight f5. And I knew that position, but I decided to go slightly crazy for some reason, and I wanted him to take on h6. I wanted to complicate the position very early on. That's a bad idea. C takes d is a bad move, because after this and takes, white is just better. I don't have an attack, and the c file is going to be open, which means that I'm going to have to castle and play king b8. I'm not threatening to take on b2 because b7 is hanging. But my opponent didn't do that. He played knight e takes d4, and I got what I wanted. I played g6. Now, objectively, white should be better here, but again, I like these positions. I've won some games with this setup, and it's a weird setup. Okay, h3. I don't really know what to say about h3. I don't understand the move, so I just played knight f5. And he took straight away, knight f5, gf5, and now I was happy, I got what I wanted. So the idea is I'm going to castle queenside, put my rooks on the g file, and start an attack, or at least in theory. Also, sometimes I can break through the center with pawn to d4, which is a pattern I was aware of, and unfortunately later on in the game, when the opportunity arose to actually play pawn to d4 and gain an advantage that way, I didn't play it. Okay, so bishop e3, queen c7, and now bishop f4, defending the pawn. I guess that's okay. Bishop e7, I could have also played bishop g7. The problem is that he can just defend the pawn, and then sometimes knight g5 is annoying with pressure on f7, but still bishop g7 would have been better, I think. After rook e1, maybe I can even castle kingside if I want to still, but I would have castled queenside, which is why I played bishop e7. I want my bishop facing this way and also trying to control the queen side a bit. He played rook fe1 and I castled, which is okay. b4. Okay, now my next move, rook h to g8, is okay. But after a4, I had an opportunity to gain an advantage here. This position after rook h to g8 is about equal. White should be slightly better, but the best move is rook c1, which is understandable. It prevents pawn to d4. But after his next move, black is better if he plays correctly. I should mention that my opponent was about 60 points lower rated than me, and he is a strong player, very experienced. Okay, so I played rook g6, which is an automatic blitz move you play because you played rook g8, you want to double your rooks, and eventually, because my bishop is on e7, if you can imagine a position with g3 or bishop g3, I can just play h5, h4 and break through. But d4 was very interesting. Now, he has to do something about it. If he doesn't, I'm going to take and harass the queen and get the d-file. So if cd4, then knight b4. And if, for example, queen to d2, I just go king b8. And you can see that I have this beautiful square on d5. I'm also stopping his attack. There is no more attack. So after d4, let's say knight takes d4. This should be best for white. Then simply bishop takes b4. And I don't know what to suggest. Probably queen f3, the engine move, doesn't make too much sense for most of you. It makes sense to me a bit. You want to get away from the pin, because if you take the bishop now, then I can just take with the rook and you have a lot of problems. So queen f3, but now knight takes d4, c takes d4 and bishop e1, and you can actually get away with this. If rook c1, you can just play rook takes d4, rook c7, king c7, and this should be about equal. But if I had to choose, I would choose black. Because my rooks are very active, I don't see how this bishop is ever going to be good. If it gets to e3, so what? I mean, I can just take on a4. So yeah, in this position after a4, d4 would have been the way to go. And what makes me angry is that I actually know that pattern and I didn't play it here. I just played automatically. Rook g6. Okay, g3. And now again, d4. Same thing. Nothing has changed in the position except for the fact that my rook is on g6. But I played rook d to g8. And this is the losing move. Basically, now the engine says white is about +2.5. So according to the engine, white is just winning. The reason is that I have no attack, that there's nothing going on in this position. It takes me too long to break through. He played king h2. I played king b8, which is okay. a5, I played h6 because I want to prevent anything coming to g5, which is too slow. But it's good. The engine says this is the best move, which means that you have no attack. a6, and now you're faced with a very tough decision. I mean, if you open up the a file, you're going to lose. If you close it down, then this pawn is so annoying that there's very little you can do about it, and eventually it's going to be used in an attack. So as soon as he played a6, I started picturing checkmates along this diagonal, and that's not paranoid thinking. That's actually a very realistic opportunity for him. So if he can get rid of my d pawn somehow with c4, force me to take, then I will be threatened with checkmate on b7 until the end of the game. Here he played b5, which is not the best move, but it gives him a very interesting option. I played knight a5 and he played knight to d4, wanting to get into c6. Now, instead of knight d4, he could have sacked the exchange on a5. This is, I think, what I would have done with the same idea, but the difference is that this knight cannot be traded off, and eventually you're going to be pushing with c4, playing queen f3 and threatening a discovered attack with the knight. But he played knight d4, and at this point I got very scared. I had no idea what to do. I had enough time on the clock, but it was very tough to play this position. I played knight c4, he played rook a b1, and I played bishop to g5. I wanted to trade off some pieces and hopefully open up the g file. His bishop doesn't really have a good retreat square, because if it moves away, then I would play f4, I think, and then if gf4, then bishop to h4, and I have some attack. But he played knight c6 check, and again, a very tough decision. If you go into the corner, then this mate is inevitable if the d pawn is gone. If you go to the c8 square, then the a7 pawn is going to drop as soon as your queen moves. And also, after c4, your king is going to be on one of these two files, which means that it's easier to get mated there. So I played king a8. Not that I think it's a good move, but I don't think there's a good move here. So, before we continue, coming back to this position after g3, where my only chance was to break open the center with d4, I completely misjudged the position and tried to do something on the g file, which is just never happening, which allowed him to just push his pawn to a6 and then get this position, and I'm in huge trouble. Okay, king a8. He played rook g1, and taking on f4, I was looking at that for a long time. The problem is that I just get into a losing endgame. If I take on f4 and gf4, okay, I don't have to take the rook. But if I do take, let's say I do take, takes, king takes. My idea was knight a5 here. Now, if this is the position I was looking at, if he takes, I'm pretty sure I can win this game. Because this is a passed pawn, the b5 pawn is hard to defend, and if b5 falls, then my pawn is queening. He will just have no counterplay. Also, it's very hard to play c4 and open up this diagonal. So this seems very promising to me. But after knight a5, I'm completely losing after knight d4, which I saw. I have absolutely no moves here. I thought the engine would say about +2, +3. The engine says +8, and the reason is there are no moves. Let's say king b8, he just plays queen g3, and he's going to start picking off my pawns. There's nothing I can do. The knight cannot move. The queen cannot move. I don't know what to do. If I don't know. Okay, let's say a stupid move like this. He just checks me and I have to go back and I lose a pawn. If I go here, he takes. You can see that this is completely over. So after rook g1, I played bishop e7. He played rook to b4, which surprised me a bit, but I knew what he wanted to do, so it makes perfect sense. It's a very strong move against a human. So if I don't take, let's say I don't know, I play h5. Then he sacrifices the exchange, and I have to take with the d pawn, so the diagonal is open. And that's about it. I'm going to lose. So I have to take it. Or I have to retreat the knight, but I have nowhere to retreat the knight. Nowhere good, at least. So I took. And now the idea is, he has to play... Excuse me, my phone is ringing. So now he has to play, all he has to do is rook c1, take, and then queen f3. And again, I'm threatened with the same mating idea. So I played rook d8. If he wants to take back the exchange, then probably I'm better, because this knight is never moving away. And if he sacks the exchange again, that's meaningless, because there are no mate threats without the knight. I can just put my queen on d7 and defend the b7 square. But he played rook to c1. Now, in this position, it's very hard to understand engine lines. I played rook d7, which loses the game because it puts me in Zugzwang. I just didn't know what else to do. But the idea behind rook d8 and then rook d7 is if he takes and takes, then I can play rook d5 and block the diagonal. The engine plays rook h8 here, which I never would have thought of. And now if takes, it should be equal after queen f3 because I can play queen d7. And knight e7 check, I have to play king b8. He has to repeat with knight c6 and king a8, and it should be equal. Yeah, so after rook h8 he cannot take. But what do I do? There's nothing I can do. But I played rook d7, and now my idea was if takes, queen f3, then I go here, and I should be winning. And I would be winning. But after rook d7 he didn't take. He played queen f3 first, which is good. Now, there is no threat, basically, because again I have rook to d7, and his knight is not on my queen. And I can at least give the exchange back. But I have no moves. What do I do? Okay, the engine says +3, the best move is h5. And of course queen h5. I played rook g7 because I didn't know what to do. And now bishop h6, rook h7, bishop f4. And he just starts advancing. King g2. I'm completely lost and I know it. But I don't know what else to do. I played rook e8, he played h6. And if I play rook back to h8, then he just plays rook h1 and crushes me on the king side. So for example, rook h7, simply rook h4. If I try to get my queen into play, then g4. If queen g8, for example, queen to g3. And now I'm just going to lose here. So after h6, I played a move which I know it loses, but I thought everything loses, and I thought this would give me some chances. Maybe he can make a mistake. Of course, I knew that if he doesn't make a mistake, I'm going to resign in 3 moves. So I played f6. Okay, now rook takes c4 is a much better move because he can insert this, attack my queen, and then gain a tempo on my queen with his knight while threatening mate. So the finish is beautiful. Rook c4, dc4, ef6. If I don't know, queen c8, then knight e7 check, and I lose my queen or I get mated. So I played rook d6. He played bishop d6, queen d6, and knight e7 check. And I finally resigned. There is absolutely no defense. It's just forced mate in a couple of moves. I don't think I've ever been beaten this beautifully. I mean, this is probably the most enjoyable game I've ever played, which again may sound weird, but his idea was just beautiful. Knight c6 check, and then rook to b4. This is just amazing. I wish I played like him. I would like to play games like this. I've never beaten anybody with an inevitable attack, which my opponent knew was coming and there was nothing they could do about it. Now, after bishop b4, cb4, the engine would probably find a way to defend this. It says this is +1, but I don't know how to defend this. I tried defending it during analysis and I couldn't. So if you cannot defend this calmly when you're alone at home and have all the time in the world, then during a game it's practically impossible. Thank you for watching. It was painful to show this game. I hope you got something from it. It was a very nice idea. There's a way to punish knight f5 and gf5, which is a setup I wanted to achieve. Stay tuned for more chess. See you tomorrow with a better game. Bye bye.